Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
Well, John, did you go outside last night or yesterday afternoon with your hard hat on to resist getting whacked in the head with all the hail?
I did. It was awesome. I mean, I think that was one of our better conversations that we've had, Brad. It's so hard to rank them because we have so many good, honest conversations. But how do you not go outside when you hear tornado sirens?
Right. We talked about that yesterday. That's the difference between men and women. Men, tornado siren, you go outside. Hey, let me see if I can see the tornado. Right,
Absolutely.
right.
It's instinctive, Brad, and it's clearly worked because we're here. Like our ancestors did it, and we're fine, you know?
Right.
It's just like we both grew up in houses that had a lot of lead paint, and look at us. We're fine. We grew up in the shadow of Coldwater Creek. We have perfect brains, Brad. What could possibly be wrong with us?
I have an update on Coldwater Creek. Let me put that on the list of things to talk about.
Put it on the list,
Brad. Which is sort of interesting because the smartest woman in the world gave me this update, which is sort of interesting. It's appropriate, but not appropriate, if that makes any sense. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That is John Combest. And by the way, we should temper what we were just talking about, the fact that we sort of dodged the bullet, so to speak, in the St. Louis area. And unfortunately, our neighbors to the east of us, Indiana and Ohio, some nasty tornadoes, some loss of life and stuff like that. And, you know, it's not even spring yet. It's still winter, but that's a whole nother story. Okay, John Combest, every day in his life for the past 22 years, I mean every day, Christmas, New Year's, he's not like a school teacher who takes like 3 months off in the summer. He does this every single day. He puts together a comprehensive list of all the top stories in the state of Missouri, political, newsworthy, things like that. Puts them on his website, johncombest.com. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, johncombest.com. We start off each show with the top 3 of what John has determined to be not just like the number 22 story, but the top 3 stories. We bring in a special guy. His name is, what's your name again?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he does...
We're on our way to the number 1. Now on with the countdown. In third place...
The day after St. Louis's 314 day, Brad, is a good time to celebrate a St. Louis victory, at least over our friends in Kansas City. This story is brought to us by our friend Tony Bateo at Tony's Kansas City, and he cited on his blog a Wallet Hub study. You know, Wallet Hub does all that data mining, data farming stuff.
Right.
St. Louis is only the number 69 city, Brad. That's right, the number 69. 69th fattest city in the United States. Kansas City is ranked number 48, Brad.
Wow.
So we got a good 21 oinky spots in front of or behind, depending how you want to consider it. I mean, you probably can't wrap your arms around it if you know what I mean. But we're number 69 in terms of fatness, and Kansas City is number 48. So, hey, at least we're doing better than Kansas City right now.
Didn't we have a study recently, one of those companies that comes out with all that data mining like you talk about, that said Missouri was the fattest state? Wasn't that recent?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And I mean, here's the thing. One of the frustrating things about any sort of obesity ranking is that a lot of times they use BMI. Now, Brad, I went to get my BMI done at when I used to work at Monsanto, and the lady was like, "Well, according to your BMI, you're right on the borderline of obesity." Now, I'm not going to make this like a vanity show, Brad, but I'm not obese, right?
Well,
go ahead.
The crazy thing about that is there's a controversy as to how did they do the BMI test on you?
I did the handheld fat transfer thing, you know, where you hold the they're not skin fold calipers, but they're
right.
You stand there and you hold a metal thing, and it allegedly determines your muscle weight versus your body fat weight.
We used to have a client, I don't know if the guy's still around, but he said, it was interesting, he had a truck outfitted, and he said the only real way to accurately gauge BMI is what they call the water tank test. Do you know
Absolutely. He's absolutely right.
Right. And he had a truck that he would, that he had outfitted with, it's like a box truck, and you go in the back and had a big old tank, and he had all the measurement equipment there and the whole bit, and he would essentially go around to health clinics and like probably like employment places and stuff like that. Now, the only downside was that we had advertised this, and we did several events with him. I don't know what happened to him, but we did quite a few events with him. And he would show up, and you had to be in swim gear because essentially you got dunked in a tank. You went essentially, I think, up to your chin. I think you got into the tank all the way up to your chin. And then essentially he did the calculations and the whole bit. But the interesting part of that was that almost everybody that showed up was obese, and especially some of the women. I would have never categorized them as obese. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean.
Some of the guys that had like the beer gut, yeah, you get that. But some of the women who I thought were very slim and trim were, in the obese category. So I'm going like,
it depends, and it also too, you could tell the deceptive thing about it is it's like the concept of and the term skinny fat. So someone can look thin based on their genetics. They might have a slight frame, but a majority of what they're carrying, not a majority, but a large percentage of their body is actually body fat because they have so little lean muscle.
Well, but yet you go back to old pictures of people at the Cardinals ball game, or like, I guess one of my favorite one was, and you're going to laugh at me when I tell you this, but every once in a while I'll see a video of one of the old Lawrence Welk shows. Remember Lawrence Welk? Remember him?
Yeah.
Some of the younger people go, who's Lawrence Welk? Anyway, at one point during the show, it was taped before a live audience, and they would play like some dance music, and they would have people in the audience. They had a dance floor between the audience and the bandstand, and they would have people on the show dancing around, and you never saw anybody who was overweight. They were all like,
it was quite common, and we've talked about this on the show before, Brad. And I sound like a grandpa when I say this, but I remember when airline stewardesses could fit easily between the aisles. And they could walk down the aisle, and it was very strange. They had what was known like in the 90s and 2000s as a waist, and that's the differential between the mid part of someone's body and their hips.
Ladies, let me make a little aside here. Mm-hmm. Okay, I am a proponent of women, and I love women. I promote women wherever I can. I say whatever a man can do, a woman can do better. John is not necessarily in the same camp as I, so let's just leave it at that, okay? Okay.
How am I not a proponent of women, Brad?
You're sort of making fun of women that once.
I didn't use the word woman. I said stewardesses. And because have you been on a flight lately? There's a lot of men that
they're not stewardesses.
They're flight attendants too. But you're right. I mean, a majority of stewardesses, I don't think we can call them stewardesses anymore.
No.
Are women. But remember, Brad, you remember what it was like, and you've seen pictures when stewardesses were. Well, you talked about Karen Carroll before. Wasn't she one of the chicks that would walk around and make conversation with businessmen?
She was a ground stewardess back in the day. She essentially would work the waiting area where she would walk around and literally she had the same uniform, but she never went on. I mean, she did from time to time go on the planes, but she just walked. See, once again, we could go a whole story on this. Air travel, you go back and you look, I mean, it's just the same thing like with baseball games. You go look at baseball games back in the 40s and 50s, and the men are in suits and ties with a hat, and the women are in dresses. And, you go to the airport, and people used to dress up to fly. It was like going to Sunday morning, going to church on Sunday morning. Now you go to like one of the what do you call the new kind of churches, like the
mega church?
Well, some of them aren't mega, but to the point where the pastor wears holy jeans, and not HOLY, but WHOLEY.
A hipster type place. Right. And for those who don't know, if you're just listening for the first time, I am a proponent of women, and Brad thinks that women should have to dress up to get on airplanes. So we'll just leave it at that.
I don't say that. I'm saying that back in the day.
We'll just leave it at that, Brad.
No. Back in the day, there was a size chart for women to be flight attendants back when they were stewardesses, and if you were outside of that size chart, and it was both height and weight, if you were outside of that size chart, you didn't get a job as a stewardess. Now, what's John saying is now that's not the case, right?
I know, and Brad, you also had a size chart on the passenger side of your car in high school. Remember that story you told me? Like you wouldn't let a woman in if she didn't meet that size chart, right?
Not me. That wasn't me. I never did that.
So that's the number one story, Brad. How about number two?
Hold on. That was number 3 story. Now we're up to number 2.
Number 3, that's right.
Okay.
Up a notch to number 2.
Attorney General Andrew Bailey has been making the rounds in light of the Hazelwood East attack. The attack and the names have been named. Kaylee Gain was the victim in the attack, and a human being named Marnice DeClue has been named, at least by the New York Daily News and others, as the attacker in the case. Attorney General Andrew Bailey did an interview with Dana Lash on Dana Lash's show. He did about a 10-minute interview. I have it up on johncombest.com today. And he also had a conversation with Jeremy Goodwin from St. Louis Public Radio. Now, Brad, Jeremy Goodwin brought a couple facts to light I bet you didn't know. Are you ready?
Oh, go ahead.
The fight between that behemoth and the young white girl, it took place in a city called Hazleton. Have you heard of Hazleton, Missouri?
Oh, hold it. Who says this again now?
Jeremy Goodwin from St. Louis Public Radio. He's
a
a reporter who interviewed
He's a local guy?
AG Andrew Bailey. Yeah, if you go there today, I have a link to it on my website. Now, to be clear, I sent a message to Jeremy. He follows me on Twitter, and I didn't follow him, so now I followed him, and I messaged him, and I let him know the correction. And Jeremy, for all we know, will go in this morning and make a correction. I let him know, first of all, the school was called Hazelwood East. There's no Hazleton. And also the attack took place in an unincorporated area of St. Louis County called Spanish Lake, which is miles away from Hazelwood. I am certain, Brad, because I have so much faith in St. Louis Public Radio. And happy Jason Rosenbaum Friday to you, Brad.
I don't think he's on today.
I have so much faith in St. Louis Public Radio. I know that Jeremy will correct that right away. And I know that he will also thank me for the correction, and he will also make an acknowledgement in the story that the story has been updated.
Well,
everybody gets a free pass from me, Brad, the first time.
Well, no, hold on
I
a
send
minute
a
now.
note to reporters. I say, hey, you might want to fact check this. They don't have to acknowledge it. And if they don't, from there going forward, I can correct it publicly on my website. It's a pretty good deal for everybody, Brad. So AG Andrew Bailey did the rounds in these interviews. And Bailey's point is that he wants state lawmakers to expand the list of crimes for which a juvenile could be considered an adult. That's the shorthand for it.
Okay.
And he made the case on Dana's show, and he made the case with St. Louis Public Radio.
Okay, 2 things. First off, is this Jeremy guy, is he a local dude? Or is he?
Yeah, he's for St. Louis Public Radio.
No.
I'm sure he's from a coast.
No,
or
that's what I'm
something.
saying.
I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I'm assuming things. I'm guessing he's not a native.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So he's probably a transplant then, right?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so
That
first
doesn't
off,
mean he can't be a good reporter.
Well, but
it just means that somebody should probably read. St. Louis Public Radio should maybe move one of their diversity reporters and maybe teach them a little copy editing, I'm guessing.
Well, first off, there is no such thing in the St. Louis area as Hazleton. And second off, the interesting part of that is that, see, I see this all the time, that you see these national stories, and there's no, I say right up front, you give them a pass. I say there's no excuse for that because of the fact that that should be basic reporting. Now, technically, what you say is an area called Spanish Lake. I mean, I grew up in that area. Matter of fact, we talked about this on Monday. That street, Claudine, is where I grew up. I grew up.
Yeah, absolutely.
My house is a few houses down from where that fight happened. And we never really considered ourselves as Spanish Lake because to us, Spanish Lake was further north up by.
I get what you're saying.
I
get it.
By Spanish Lake. God, the whole thing is so bizarre.
What do you, just for the sake of nomenclature here, what did you consider that area just north of East? Like, did you consider yourself just the county?
Yeah, I lived in St. Louis County. Just for a long time, I lived in St. Charles County. And people would go, well, what is city? I go, I lived in unincorporated St. Charles County.
Right, I get it. Yeah, and now just we might be splitting hairs here, Brad, but I would consider the area at East and the former Kirby Junior High. I consider anything north of 270 and east of 367 to be Spanish Lake. But you grew up right at that intersection, and you consider it differently. I think those are the quadrants, though. Anything north of 270 and anything east of 367 to me is Spanish Lake.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fair. Okay. Moving along.
The number one.
If we didn't have enough excitement in congressional races up till now, we have it now, Brad. We have more than one what will be a high-profile congressional race.
I heard
and
this.
that is Riverfront Times founder and longtime publisher Ray Hartmann has announced that he is running for Congress.
Now,
and he is running in the 2nd Congressional District in the primary. And by the way, we should give a shout out to a listener. There's a listener. I didn't okay if it was okay to say her name on the air, but she corrected me a while back because we talked about a guy named John Keeney, and I called him John Keene. And this listener said, hey, love your guys' show. Love listening to you. Just so you know, John, get it right. It's Keeney. Okay. There's a Democrat named John Keeney that already announced that he was going to take on Ann Wagner. Ray Hartmann, formerly from the Riverfront Times and a media personality, announced that he's going to run in the Democratic primary because he wants to take on Ann Wagner in the 2nd Congressional District.
Well, now that's sort of interesting. Is he still on KTRS, or is he still?
He is not. No,
he's not on the show anymore because they don't have the equal time. But is he still on the what is the show you were on? You were on that show a couple times, weren't you?
I was. Yeah, I was on once. It was Donnybrook, and last night he had. I'm pulling up Ray's statement here actually, and so Ray was on Donnybrook last night and announced on the show. The show had teased throughout the day, hey, watch, there's going to be a big announcement. Something big's going to happen. And Ray announced that he was leaving the show because he's running for Congress.
Yeah, I'd say that's if for people who don't know what we're talking about, there's what they call the equal. It's interesting. People refer to it as equal time. It's not equal time. It's equal opportunity. That's what the FCC says. And this happens quite often if you have, like, for example, if you have a news reporter who decides he wants to run for office, that puts the station in a sort of a sticky wicket in the respect that every minute that reporter's on the air, you have to give equal time to someone who is running against them, or I should say equal opportunity. And to me, I had this happen when I had Brian Nieves on my station years ago, and he was running for state senate, and there was a big hubbub about the fact that Dick Stratman, his wife, can't remember her name, Nancy Stratman, I can't remember her name. Anyway,
yeah, and you wanted to be on demanded equal time, and you said, hey, if he wants to come on the show, come in tomorrow morning, pick your time.
Well, and I said Brian was on the air from 7 to 9, and I said he can come on from 9 to 11, and she came back and she said that's not equal opportunity. Well, it is equal to opportunity. So then I came back and I said, okay, fine, you and Dick and Brian can do the show together, which of course went nowhere because of the fact
because they're not going to take you up on that. Here's what's going to happen. So first of all, and I mentioned this, Brad, on our very first show that we ever did on 11/20/2023, I have a bias toward Ray Hartmann in that when I did the Donnybrook show, he was very kind to me. He's been very kind to me over the years. He'll send me links to stuff. So I like Ray Hartmann. If anybody doesn't like that, you can go practice some self-love. Go ahead.
No, he's a good dude. He's done a lot of stuff for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now the great thing about this campaign, though, is that great depending on how you look at it, is that Ray knows that he's not going to win. And I don't think he's running because he thinks he can win. I think he's running to prove a point. Ray is really good about pointing out what he considers to be Republican hypocrisy on issues. E.g., why do Republicans talk about limited government, but then they want government to get involved in certain decisions? Why do they say that we need to take care of America first and then give a ton of money to the Ukraines of the world and other people? Here's my prediction, Brad. Now, this is sure to make everybody mad. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Ray Hartmann knows that he's not going to win. He's going to win the Democratic primary. He's going to lose by double digits in November to Ann Wagner. And after the election, Ann Wagner's going to get people together, her team, her family, and she's going to say, guys, this is my last campaign. I'm going to serve 2 more years. After running against Ray Hartmann and after what I went through running against a guy like Ray Hartmann, and I'll tell you what, Ray Hartmann is going to pull out all the stops against Ann Wagner. He's going to exacerbate every fissure between Ann Wagner and Josh Hawley, or Ann Wagner versus longtime Trump supporters. And you know what? He's going to make it so miserable for her. Ann has a stellar career, Brad, that spans many decades. And you know what? She can serve 1 more term. And I imagine she says, to heck with all this. I'm going to spend some time with my grandkids. I'm going to enjoy the millions of dollars that my family has made. I'm going to have a beautiful retirement. And you know what? There can be a wonderful MAGA versus MAGA primary in 2026. And the beauty for Ray Hartmann is he'll be able to go around on the cocktail circuit and say, well, I'm the guy that retired Ann Wagner. She ran against me, and she said, no more of that.
Well,
everybody wins, Brad.
First off, I wouldn't be so sure to say that he doesn't have a chance, because the last time
he doesn't have a snowman's chance.
Oh, come on. The last time she ran, I don't even remember who ran against her, but she did really well.
No, she didn't. Anne won by double digits, Brad.
Yeah, but
it wasn't even close.
Well, John, okay.
We'll look it up on break.
I thought it was closer than that. No,
it was absolutely not closer than that.
Well, but so you think she's going to retire? That she's going to burn her out? That she's going to just go? Oh.
I think that after so Anne was elected in 2012. So she will have, at the end of this term, after she wins, in 2026, she will have served, what, is that 14 years? I'm so bad at math.
Hey, she
will have served more than a decade in Congress. Do you want to fly on Southwest twice a week, Brad, and then spend time away from your grandkids? And Anne has, I mean, look, I guess all this money's public. Anne and her family have more money than they can possibly spend. Like, just go travel, spend time with your grandkids. And the other thing is, I thought that this would be the election season in which I thought Bob Onder was actually going to file in the second and file against her in the primary. Anne's done so much to build this party. She is a George Bush Republican and a Donald Trump party.
John.
And by the way, Ann Wagner won by 12 points.
Okay,
Brad.
John, you asked me a question, and I'll answer the question. I would fly on Southwest 7 days a week, because I'm the person that would say, and to the point where grandkids overrated. Who cares? I don't have any money, so I don't have to worry about that. I disagree with you, because I think that, I think what you're saying is, first off, I say this all the time. I get myself in trouble every time I have to finish this segment by saying, John, I'm going to ask you, you're the man with all the information. You know what the number one cause of death in the United States is?
Retirement.
Exactly. So why would she want to retire and die? She should keep working. Look at.
She should just work herself to the bone.
No, look at Nancy Pelosi. Nancy's still in there. We had Dianne Feinstein, who died in office. Once again, we've got an 81-year-old president. How old's Ann Wagner? What's she, like in her 50s or something like that?
Ray is 71 though. Ray Hartmann 71.
Well, he's in the prime of
life.
Yeah,
and Ann's, Ann's getting up there.
I'm going to look her up.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?